"Go away," he repeated. "One of us will get you sooner or later," she said. "There are lots more of us now. Let it be me, Mark. I'm hungry." She tried to smile, but it turned into a nightshade grimace that made his bones cold. He held up his cross and pressed it against the window. She hissed, as if scalded, and let go of the window frame. For a moment she hung suspended in air, her body becoming misty and indistinct, then gone. But not before he saw, or thought he saw, a look of desperate unhappiness on her face. And that is an excerpt from the book I'll be reviewing today, Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Back in 1971, Stephen King enjoyed the opportunity of rereading Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. He was teaching an English class called Fantasy and Science Fiction at the time, and he discovered his students were having just as much fun with Stoker's Gothic novel as he was. One night, King voiced aloud, what if Dracula appeared in the America of the 1970s? He even joked he'd probably land in New York and be killed by a taxicab. His wife Tabitha later suggested, what if he came to the Maine countryside instead? Isn't that where his castle was? The Transylvanian countryside? And that was all it took to spark Mr. King's imagination, and he began to see all the possible directions he could take his vampire tale. Published in 1975, Salem's Lot tells the story of Ben Mears, a writer who returns to his hometown with the hope of writing a new book, a book that will confront the traumas from his past. The source of his nightmares is the Marston House, a brooding old house that is described as looming over the town like some ancient idol. Dark things happened there. It's the bad place in town with a disturbing history. The original owner, Hubie Marston, lost his mind in that house back in the Depression era. He then killed his wife and then killed himself. The house serves well developing a creepy atmosphere in the novel, as well as lending to the themes about the nature of evil. Some readers disliked the slow, atmospheric development of the plot. I personally enjoyed it. I felt these background details added some depth to the story. Ben meets some companions during his revisit to the lot. There's Susan Norton, the small-town gal who's a bit naive and somewhat dull due to her quiet upbringing. She longs for the big city and finds Ben Mears, the exotic and cool, famous author, to be attractive. In fact, a romance sparks between the two of them throughout the course of the story. Then we have Mark Petrie, an idealized version of who we wish we could have been as kids. He's resourceful and brave. In fact, he's superior to the adults in many ways. He reads monster magazines and knows the lore of the vampire. This allows him a simple, honest belief in the vampire's existence. Then we've got the witty Matt Burke, an English teacher who has taught high school for decades and has a personal connection with everyone. We also have a drunken Irish priest experiencing a crisis of faith in Father Callahan, and the doctor Jimmy Cody, who basically is cannon fodder for a gruesome death at the end of the book. And I cannot forget the duo of Straker and Barlow. These two are the catalyst for the doomful machinations that push the plot forward. Barlow is the master vampire. As he puts it, I am not a serpent, but the father of serpents. Barlow is our Dracula, set in 1970s America, and Straker is his guardian/servant. Straker is a suave and sneaky fellow who can charm all the women in the lot. He too meets a gruesome death, which is a genuinely horrifying moment in the book. His head is bashed in, and all the blood is drained from him by his master. Then, as a finishing touch, he is hung upside down for Ben and his friends to find. Once Barlow and Straker move into the Marston House, their nefarious designs are at work. One by one, citizens of Salem's Lot are secretly, under the cover of night, transformed into vampires. Ben and his few companions must then band together to fight against this sieging darkness. King does a fine job developing the town of Salem's Lot. The town itself feels like a character, an entity as old as time. Having seen every vanity and evil carried out by its residents, the town has become cold and indifferent to them. There's a constant feeling of slow rising stress throughout the book, the constant sense of something awry, something unsettling. The book has no trouble producing spine-tingling suspense. The most disturbing scene for me had to be the one that involved the staking of Susan Norton. As I mentioned before, Ben has developed a relationship with her, and now he has to face a nightmare, worse than ever he could imagine. The woman he loves is now an unrecognizable monster. She is now a part of that darkness spreading throughout the town. It's the knowledge we have of their backstory together that makes this scene so impactful. Here's some excerpts from the scene to give you an idea. Quote, "The hammer rose and fell. Again, again, again. Blood splattered across the fresh linen sheet, which Jimmy had so neatly turned back. And then, suddenly, her back arched like a bow, and her mouth stretched open until it seemed her jaws would break. A huge explosion of darker blood issued forth from the wound the stake had made, almost black in this chancy, lunatic light. Heart's blood. The scream that welled from the sounding chamber of that gaping mouth came from all the subcellars of deepest race memory, and beyond that, to the moist darknesses of the human soul. She settled back, her mouth relaxing, closing, the mangled lips parted in a last, susurrating pulse of air. For a moment the eyelids fluttered, and Ben saw, or fancied he saw, the Susan he had met in the park, reading his book. It was done. He backed away, dropping the hammer, holding his hands out before him." End quote. The scene carries on with Ben fleeing from the cellar. His mind is basically in a dizzying oblivion at this point. He's broken. There's also something about the description of the stake puncturing deeper into the heart, causing the darker heart's blood to gush forth, that really makes my skin crawl. It's a visceral image, but it almost seems symbolic in some way as well. Sort of like they're cutting into a deeper layer, the darker layer of the human soul. Let me know your thoughts on this scene. Some themes that really resonated with me dealt with the nature of evil. This is a topic King touches on a lot in his books. Is evil an outside incarnation, some harbinger of tragedy like in his short story The Monkey? Or does it come from inside, a product of our own minds and hearts, like depicted in his novel The Shining? The jaded, cynical priest, Father Callahan, desires the existence of an outside evil, some physical manifestation, a devil with horns he can confront and defeat. He gets what he wants in a sense, as vampires spread throughout the town. The vampires serve as a great symbol for the secret sin, for they hide away in the day to resurface under the cover of darkness, carrying out their vile acts. Barlow, the master vampire, is Father Callahan's true test of faith, his confrontation with the evil with a capital E. Let me know your thoughts on the thematic elements of the novel. Maybe there are other themes that stood out to you more. Overall, I rate Salem's Lot by Stephen King a 4 out of 5. I strongly recommend it. If you've read the book, comment below. Let me know your thoughts on it. And that concludes my review of Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This is DeathGroundReviews, the monster that devours horror, suspense, and all those things of the fantastic. I'll see you next time.